Welcome to Data Talk, presented by IDEA Data and Research. DATA stands for Data Analysis Techniques Applied. Data Talk is a series of webinars for Arkansas's local education agencies on the use of data, particularly for special education staff. In this episode of Data Talk, we will present the two worlds of disproportionality. The two worlds of disproportionality. IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, mentions disproportionality in two different sections of the law. Section 300.616 is the Annual Performance Report, also known as the APR. Section 300.646 is Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services. It is also referred to as CCEIS or Significant Disproportionality. Section 300.616 is the Annual Performance Report. In the APR, there are three indicators which address disproportionality. Indicator 4 is discipline, and it examines a significant discrepancy in disciplinary action in two ways. 4A is the rate of out-of-school suspension expulsion greater than 10 days, special education compared to general education. 4B is the rate of out-of-school suspension expulsion greater than 10 days, special education by a specific race compared to general education for all races. Indicator 9 is disproportionate representation in identification as a student with a disability, and Indicator 10 is disproportionate representation in a specific disability category. When it comes to discipline, the APR and CCEIS are polar opposites. First, let's look at the APR. Indicator 4A, significant difference in out-of-school suspension expulsion. Significant difference in discipline. Currently, the difference is 1.36 percentage points. There must be at least 5 students with disabilities with more than 10 days of out-of-school suspension expulsion. The calculation is the special education rate compared to the general education rate. If the special education rate is more than 1.36 percentage points higher than the general education rate, the district flags for Indicator 4A. Indicator 4B, significant difference in out-of-school suspension expulsion by race. Significant difference in discipline. Currently, the significant difference by race ethnicity is 4.00 percentage points. Additionally, the special education child count must have more than 40 students, and the special education child count must have more than 10 students in a particular race ethnicity. The special education rate for a specific race is compared to the general education rate for all races. If the special education rate is more than 4 percentage points higher for a particular race than general education for all races, the district flags. What happens when a district flags for Indicator 4A and 4B? First, if a district flags, they must complete the discipline self-assessment and submit it to the special education unit. The self-assessment is posted on the Special Education Monitoring Procedures website. Special Education Monitoring section reviews the self-assessments, and if inappropriate policy, procedures, or practices are identified, a non-compliance citation is issued and the district has to create a corrective action plan. Identification and disability in the APR. Indicator 9, disproportionate representation in identification. Rate of districts with disproportionate representation of racial and ethnic groups in special education and related services. That is a result of inappropriate identification. For this indicator, the calculation is a risk ratio. The data set includes the district child count by race, excluding students in private residential facilities, correctional facilities, and those that were parentally placed in a private school. The comparison data set is district enrollment by race. Districts with a risk ratio greater than 3.00 in a specific race is flagged. Indicator 10. Disproportionate representation in a specific disability category. The rate of districts with disproportionate representation of racial and ethnic groups in a specific disability category that is a result of inappropriate identification. Categories to be analyzed are autism, specific learning disability, speech impairment, other health impaired, intellectual disability, and emotional disturbance. Indicator 10. Disproportionate representation in a specific disability category. The calculation is a risk ratio, and the data set includes district child count by race for specific disability categories, excluding students in private residential facilities, correctional facilities, and parentally placed in private schools. The comparison data is district enrollment by race. Districts with a risk ratio greater than 3.00 in a specific disability and race are flagged. What happens when a district flags for indicator 9 or 10? If a district flags, they must complete the identification self-assessment and submit it to the special education unit. The self-assessment is posted on the Special Education Monitoring Procedure website. Special Education Monitoring section reviews the self-assessment. If inappropriate policy, procedures, or practices are identified, a non-compliance citation is issued and the district has to create a corrective action plan. How else is this information used? The requirement to complete a self-assessment for indicators 4B, 9, or 10 is used in the district's annual results-driven accountability determination. Districts who do not have to complete the self-assessment for the reporting period receive a score of 4. Districts who have flagged in the reporting period but not in the previous reporting period and completed the self-assessment with no identified findings received a score of 3. Districts who flagged in the reporting period and in the previous reporting period and completed the self-assessment with no identified findings received a score of 2. Districts who flagged in the reporting period and for more than 2 previous reporting periods completed the self-assessment with no identified findings received a score of 1. Districts who flagged in the reporting period completed the self-assessment and was identified as having inappropriate policy, procedures, or practices received a score of 0. Now let's shift to a new world. Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services. Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services, CCEIS, also known as Significant Disproportionality. Section 300.646 is Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services, or CCEIS, which is also known as Significant Disproportionality. Revised regulations went into effect May 2019 after U.S. Department of Education lost a court case about delaying the implementation, which was supposed to begin July 2018. All states who did not implement the new regulations had to recalculate immediately and identify districts. There are 14 areas of analysis. The 14 areas of CCEIS are identification, disability category, which includes autism, specific learning disability, speech, other health impaired, intellectual disability, and emotional disturbance. There are 2 categories of educational environment: less than 40% of the day in the regular classroom, which is E-School Code SC, and students in day school, E-School Code DI. There are 5 areas of discipline to be analyzed: in-school suspension 10 days or less, in-school suspension greater than 10 days, out-of-school suspension 10 days or less, and out-of-school suspensions greater than 10 days, and total removals, which is a combination of in-school, out-of-school, and unilateral removal to an alternative learning environment because of discipline. The required methodology is risk ratio. A risk ratio examines the likelihood of one race being identified, placed, or disciplined compared to all other races. For example, the likelihood of Hispanic students being identified in the disability category of speech impairment compared to non-Hispanic students. The states get to set their own cell size, N size, risk ratio threshold, and the number of trend years for identification. For Arkansas, the cell size is 5, N size is 15, the risk ratio threshold is 3.00, and the number of years is 3. We continue with the methodology, IDEA data versus the comparison data for significant disproportionality in the areas of identification and disability category. On the left side of the slide is the IDEA dataset requirements, and on the right side is the comparison dataset requirements. The IDEA dataset requirements for identification and disability categories are child count by race, child count by disability, and race. The only disabilities examined are the 6 categories we previously discussed. The dataset excludes students in the following educational settings, since the students are not usually placed in these settings by districts: correctional facilities, private residential facilities, parentally placed, and private schools. The comparison data set for identification and disability categories are district enrollment by race. There are no adjustments made to the enrollment data. Significant disproportionality in identification and disability category is the same methodology as indicator 9 and 10 for the annual performance report. The annual performance report works as a warning system for significant disproportionality. Continuing with the methodology of IDEA data and comparison data, significant disproportionality in educational environment within special education. On the left side of the slide is the IDEA data set for educational environment. On the right side is the comparison data set for educational environment. The IDEA data set for educational environment includes child count by educational environment and race. Only 2 codes are examined: DI for private day school and SC, less than 40% of the day in the regular classroom. The comparison data set for educational environment is the child count by race. The data set excludes students in the following LRE settings: correctional facilities, private residential facilities, and parentally placed in private schools. The comparison data set for educational environment and discipline is the same data set that is used under the IDEA data set for identification. Significant disproportionality in educational environment. Educational environment is examined within special education. It is not compared to the enrollment of the district. Additionally, disproportionality in educational environment is not part of the annual performance report. Continuing with our methodology of IDEA data versus comparison data for significant disproportionality in discipline within special education. On the left side of the slide is the IDEA data set for discipline. On the right side is the comparison data set for discipline. The IDEA data set for discipline is a count of students with in-school suspensions 10 days or less, in-school suspensions greater than 10 days, out-of-school suspensions 10 days or less, out-of-school suspension expulsion greater than 10 days, and total removals. Total removals includes in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, and unilateral removal to an alternate educational environment due to discipline. The comparison data set for discipline is child count by race. The data set excludes students in the following LRE settings: correctional facilities, private residential facilities, and parentally placed in private schools. It is the same comparison set that is used for educational environment. Now let us look at disproportionality in discipline compared to the annual performance report. They are polar opposites. Significant disproportionality in discipline compared to the annual performance report. Remember that significant disproportionality and CCEIS are synonymous. CCEIS examines 5 areas of disciplinary actions: CCEIS examines discipline within special education using the risk ratio methodology. It requires being identified for 3 consecutive years in the same race and area of identification to flag. Those who do flag are required to complete the CCEIS tool. The annual performance report examines only one area of disciplinary actions, greater than 10 days out-of-school suspension expulsion by race. The measurement is the significant difference between special and general education. It is a single-year event, and districts who flag are required to complete the discipline self-assessment. What happens when a district flags for 3 consecutive years in one or more of the 98 possible areas? Yes, there really are 98 possible ways to be identified for CCEIS, for we have 14 areas of analysis by 7 races, which totals 98. If a district flags for 3 consecutive years, they must complete the Arkansas CCEIS tool located on the CCEIS webpage, which is part of their root cause analysis. The CCEIS tool includes the student folder review in the areas identified, the success gap, and the self-assessment in the areas identified. Additionally, they must complete the CCEIS application, which includes the results of the root cause analysis. Let's continue our discussion of what happens when a district flags for 3 consecutive years in one or more of the 98 areas. Once the district has submitted its required documents, a review of the CCEIS tool and application is undertaken by the Special Education Funding and Finance section, as well as the Monitoring and Program Effectiveness section. If inappropriate policy, procedures, or practices are identified, a noncompliance citation is issued, and the district has to create a corrective action plan. Any district that flags for 3 consecutive years must set aside 15% of their allocation for the designated year and provide comprehensive coordinated early intervening services to students. For a side-by-side comparison of disproportionality, watch Data Talk Season 2, Episode 3 on the IDEA Data and Research YouTube channel. A complete list of the Data Talk videos can be found on the IDEA Data and Research webpage. Thank you for reviewing Data Talk. We hope you have found it to be helpful and will join us for upcoming webinars. If you wish to contact us, you may do so through the mail at IDEA Data and Research, University of Arkansas at Little Rock, 2801 South University Avenue, Education 209, Little Rock, Arkansas 72204. Our phone number is 501-683-7219. Our fax number is 501-569-8238. If you have any questions, you can contact Dr. Jody Fields at jafields@ualr.edu.